What's up, dudes?
Hey, what's up?
I'm Captain Gimpy. I am too lazy to edit today, and this is, I don't know what your name
Zen
is.
Burro, guys.
So what are we talking about?
We're going to be talking about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy and how it still holds up after all this time. After, I guess, would you count Into the Spider-Verse as like a reboot or just its own story? All right, two reboots of the Web Slinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, which you have the Andrew Garfield films, which there are only two, and the Tom Holland ones.
Of which there will be 3.
Yes.
So, I want to be fair, right? My biggest problem is only with Andrew Garfield's reboot of Spider-Man and not Tom Holland, although I didn't like the first Tom Holland movie. And it was mostly because I felt like I was watching an episode of, Gossip Girl, or maybe rewatching Mean Girls without the comedy, and then they threw Spider-Man in it.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, Far From Home was pretty good, and which was what I expected because it was the Spider-Man I saw in the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
So it was weird that the first one was so off. Anyway.
Yeah.
Here's why the Sam Raimi trilogy still holds up. So what are some of your thoughts before I blow this up real quick?
Well, first of all, Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker. I think,
despite the fact that he was almost 30.
In the first film when he's still in high school.
Yeah.
In fact, it made me think that, are these what high school kids supposed to look like? Because I don't see that.
Dude, I know. Right?
Yeah, but anyway, the Peter Parker that's written in this film trilogy, I think is closest to the comics. Like, he's nerdy, he's socially awkward. He actually does use his intelligence to figure out situations, even as Spider-Man, which I think sometimes is missing from the other ones.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing for me is, Stanley even said that Spider-Man and the whole mutant thing in general was supposed to be like an allegory for puberty, right?
Right.
And even before I knew he said that, that's how I felt specifically reading Spider-Man. Because Peter Parker is so freaking awkward. Okay, and for comic book nerds, we're not talking about that whole weird arc where Spider-Man has a clone, names him Ben, and...
Yeah.
No. I know about that. Saga. I know about that. We're not doing it. So when you look at Sam Raimi's trilogy, the thing when you do an adaptation to me is that you have to understand the spirit of the work.
Right.
And you have to love something about it. It has to personally connect with you. Otherwise, you have no business writing a script for it.
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me about Sam Raimi and his movies were that, even before I dug into the DVD special features and realized how much of a nerd he was for this stuff, it was very clear that he read them all.
Yeah.
Everything that he adapted, he read, and then he loved it.
Yep.
And then I found out later that he read it all as a kid, and I was like, I get it.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to bring up is all the scenes with the characters like Parker, Mary Jane, even Harry Osborn.
James Franco was so good.
Yeah, even the villains, I thought they all had good, their motivations were well written and revealed, and especially in Spider-Man 2, there's a lot of emotional scenes which I think evolve the characters. For example, Peter Parker telling Aunt May that he felt responsible for his Uncle Ben getting shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that scene still is still pretty intense because it's a very human moment.
Yeah, it is.
I think, yeah. And that's the weird thing, these films really, I think the first 2 films, I think they juggle the whole, the human drama with all the superhero fights and all that.
Yeah, they do. And, that's the thing, right? to me, like, that was the first time I had ever seen Spider-Man on the big screen. Like, I know there was a failed attempt at a feature-length film, and there was the live-action TV show, both of which were not good even during the time they were released.
Yeah.
But for me, that was the first time I saw Spider-Man. I grew up reading Spider-Man. I read Spider-Man all the way through, like, just about, like, 2010. I barely stopped reading Spider-Man when I was like, what, 26?
Yeah.
So I know all of the characters and all of the permutations of those characters really well. And to me, Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, despite the fact that he looks really old,
Mm-hmm.
and to answer your question, no, high school kids don't really look like
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
but that's what we thought we looked like when we were in high school.
Yeah.
And I still don't look like that because apparently I can't age.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing for me is that, like, these newer film, like specifically the Andrew Garfield one,
Mm-hmm.
like, you can do whatever you want to the character, but when you when you change the fundamental nature of the character that people grew up with, and you don't adapt the rest of the narrative to suit the change in characterization, you are committing a sin against writing, basically. Like, if
Yeah.
you're going to change the character, you have to change everything around him to match. And so Andrew Garfield, basically, he's smart-ish.
Yeah.
I mean, they show some intelligence in those films,
Mm-hmm.
but he's this cool dude who is really mouthy both in and out of the Spider-Man costume, and, like, he has way too much confidence to be a dude going through adolescence. I'm sorry, like, because most people who project that kind of confidence are really either, like, fake hippie or, like, they're assholes.
Yeah.
And in those movies, he was neither.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't even a decent mix of the two where you could be like, oh, I could see him trying to mask some insecurity. It just didn't come through.
Yeah.
And what it felt like to me was that he was just Spider-Man in costume and out of costume.
Yep.
And one of the things that made the Spider-Man narrative so powerful is that when Peter Parker has the mask on, he is free to be not Peter Parker.
Yeah, it's like it literally is a persona for him.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, during that period of most people's lives, that's what we wish in some way, that we were different, better, faster, stronger, smarter,
Right.
more quick-witted, whatever.
Yeah, and in the Sam Raimi trilogy, there's always these bigger themes that, you know, the comics also explored, like the sense of identity crisis that Peter goes through in the middle of the trilogy,
Right.
when he's torn between, like, living a normal life and trying to tell Mary Jane he loves her and being Spider-Man.
Right, exactly. And
yeah.
I was going to mention that even though the third one is not...
Yeah, and here's the thing about the third one is it was all crunched together because Sam Raimi couldn't make any more Spider-Man movies.
Right, like, it's not... Okay, so from a narrative perspective, its biggest problem isn't that it's poor in quality, it's that the whole... You're trying to complete, like, 4 different character arcs in a single movie, where those character arcs were left in the middle of their natural progression.
Yeah. I think it should have shrunk down the character arcs and kind of just focused on, like, Harry Osborn's revenge quest more, because that was kind of the linchpin in the film.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you want to throw Venom in there, it would make sense, because, I mean, the Hobgoblin and Eddie Brock have similar motivations.
Yeah.
Until Harry finds out that, you know, Norman killed himself by being Norman.
Yeah.
Crazy Norman because of the gas.
Yep.
We're talking about film canon, not comic books.
Right.
But, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about the third film, it completes the puberty arc, right? Because that's how I'm looking at it. The theme is adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
It's puberty. So the third film, even though it's all over the place because it has to be, it feels like he wanted to make 3 more movies and only got to make 1.
Yeah.
So, like, it still completes that. I mean, with an over exaggerated symbiote Spidey,
Yeah, yeah,
he had to over exaggerate some things, I think, in order to even make the arc feel like it worked. Whether or
yes.
not you like the execution is completely up for debate. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I literally watched the film at double speed to get through it because I forgot how bad some of it was. I mean,
Even the editing is kind of weird in
well,
that movie.
yeah, and the green screen in there was particularly not well lit, put together. I
Yeah.
mean, it just the whole thing felt rushed. I mean, and it. But with that being said, there were still some things I liked about it, like the tension
Mm-hmm.
between Peter and Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Um, Harry Osborn's redemption arc was carried out really well, if not rushed.
Yes.
Um, I mean, so it wasn't a bad movie. It was just trying to do too much too quickly.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons why Sam Raimi's trilogy is so good because he understood what made Spider-Man Spider-Man and what
Yeah.
made Peter Parker Peter Parker.
Yep.
And he treated them as separate characters when he needed to, but he understood them both well enough to see where they intersected.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I keep mentioning this, but like the other Spider-Man movies, so we agree that the first Andrew Garfield film's pretty alright, right?
I mean, I don't like any of them.
Okay.
You can.
I thought the first one was okay with Andrew Garfield, but the second one was a mess, and they were trying to squeeze in that Gwen Stacy, her neck snaps as Spider-Man's trying to save her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything to say about that before I go on?
I mean, so like I literally think those two films should never have been made because I've seen that story so many times.
Yeah.
I've read it 3 or 4 different times and then I saw it on film once. I didn't need to see it again. I've seen it on in cartoon form.
Yep.
It was ripped straight out of the comics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't need it again.
Yeah, and so yeah, the second Spider-Man film with Andrew Garfield is pretty bad, and the first Tom Holland movie, Homecoming. I mean, I didn't really like it, to be honest.
I didn't either, but like it was something weird because normally when I don't like a movie, I know why.
You
right?
weren't sure why.
And I didn't know why. I came out of the theater being like, no, it was alright, but like I didn't really like it. And
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was at first I wanted to blame New Spidey because I mean, like I said, Sam Raimi's trilogy was my trilogy. Like
Yeah.
that was the Spider-Man. Like
Yeah.
that was it. Like I didn't expect more Spider-Man movies ever.
Yeah.
Didn't want any more. But what I realized was that whoever wrote that screenplay didn't understand shit about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And so, like, on the one hand, you have Peter Parker who is appropriately awkward.
Yep.
But then you barely get to know Peter in that movie. You have all these scenes with all these awkward little teenagers around him, but you don't know him. And then you have the Vulture.
Yep.
Who I don't think was the appropriate villain for this kind of story arc.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who played the Vulture?
Michael Keaton.
It was Michael Keaton. I was going to call him Birdman.
I mean, he was pretty good in that role, but his role was kind of...
I like Michael Keaton. I like the Vulture. I don't think the Vulture was the villain for this movie.
Yeah.
If anything, I think they should have just... Instead of trying to do an origin story of any kind, they should have just used Venom. But maybe they couldn't because Sony.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because Spider-Man and Venom, like the two characters in the human world that they are similar enough to create a dramatic tension if you're trying to make an original story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But putting the Vulture in there without any setup, oh, he's a garden variety criminal, blah, blah, but he's really smart and somehow has insane amounts of access to military-grade technology.
Yeah.
See, in the original, he was a rich old man who wanted youth.
Yep.
That was, and so it explained why he had all this ridiculous gadgetry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But with this movie, there wasn't very much set up, and it felt like, you know how Mean Girls kind of set itself up to be a nature film about like social hierarchy
Yeah.
and kind of satirized that?
Mhm.
That's what this movie felt like, and it kept me from feeling like I was seeing Spider-Man.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't count the Civil War introduction of Spider-Man as like, oh, that's how we know about him.
No,
Like I
yeah.
felt like Homecoming could have expanded upon it, but it didn't really do
Right, it
that.
just tried to do its own thing and it didn't work.
Yeah,
Far From Home, I gotta give Tom Holland props because it shows that his time with the character has improved how he feels in the character's skin, right?
yeah,
Because he was Peter Parker, although this Peter Parker is not quite as smart.
mm-hmm,
Like, you know, it's like he got hit with a railroad spike in the head or something, but he's still smart enough.
yeah,
But like, he felt like Peter Parker, and he got a lot more comfortable, like being really, really quick-witted and sarcastic,
yeah. That's something I give props to as well.
which was the one thing people praised Andrew Garfield for, even when they didn't like those movies.
Yeah,
So Tom Holland really didn't have a grasp of that in the first film, and I don't blame him.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard.
Right, right. I mean, he's kind of young.
Because you got to deliver it like you do it all the time, even though Peter does not do it all the time.
Yep.
And that's difficult to do because you're trying to play this nerdy Michael Cera type guy
Yep.
with super brains, and then you're like, oh, wait, now I got to be kind of a douchey superhero guy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's not easy. But in the second movie, I really liked him, and I'm looking forward to there being a third.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So hopefully this will become a second favorite Spider-Man trilogy.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that the Andrew Garfield films just feel a little bit like Sony was trying to reassert themselves because around the time Marvel was really gaining that momentum with their
And not only that, but their contract for the Spider-Man movie rights was about to expire.
yeah. So there's that.
And I always try to look at it from a pragmatic point of view too, not just the creative one.
Yeah.
So they were trying to be like, oh, we can show you how to make a freaking Spider-Man movie. We can do it better than you. And then they also made Venom, and I still haven't seen it because it does not look good.
Don't forget Morbius.
Okay, I like Morbius, so I might see it. Okay,
all right,
shut up.
all right. We'll give it a chance.
But with that being said, I don't like Jared Leto.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
care if you hate me. So it's been 18 minutes. I think we should go.
Yeah.
Remember, link to the blog will be in the description. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your favorite Spider-Man movie of all time is. I might disagree, but there are no wrong answers.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
has their own taste. And if you say your favorite Spider-Man is 1960s Batman, I'm gonna hit you from where I'm at.
Yeah.
All right, dudes.
All right.
Bye.